These pictures I've been showing you are a series of 12 pictures, the life of a doctor, and Frank Netter did them for the armor company, who would give them out, as goodwill, and the doctors liked them very much. And I believe there's reproductions of them hanging in the whole series of 12 of them out there. And but at about this time too, 1953, the Seba company got the idea that they wanted to have Frank's exclusive right just to paint for them and not to paint for anyone else. And so they paid him extra to work on a colossal project. It was the Seba collection of medical illustrations. It was the entire anatomy and pathology of the human body, in health and in disease. And that became known as the Green Books because they were covered in green bookrum. And so Frank Netter estimated that would take 10 years to do. Well, 10 years came and went, and he'd already scratched the surface. And another 10 years and another 10 years. And he would work, and now these did not go into as much depth as the clinical symposia. It was more of an overview of the topic, and they were divided by systems. The first was the nervous system, and then the reproductive system, and then the endocrine system, and so forth. He did these beautiful anatomical pictures. This is of the pharynx. Looks something like Georgia O'Keeffe might have done, no? This is a schema of the liver that he did with Hans Popper, who was at that time at the University of Chicago, moved to Mount Sinai later, very well-known liver doctor. And this is a very well-known painting that he did with Dr. Paul Dudley White, that well-known heart doctor. And in this painting, you can see all the precipitating factors for a heart attack. This man had had a heavy meal. He's going out into the cold. He's carrying a valise, a heavy valise he's carrying. He drops his cigarette, the pain on where it is, and his face is contorted in pain. It's a very well-known picture. I think all of the doctors and medical students remember this picture. Now, how did he do these pictures? He would make a sketch. He would take a sketch and do it on tracing paper. He'd make the sketch. Now, this little boy was probably not sick. There's probably a little boy who says, "Now look sick," and he'd take his picture. He used to do that with us all the time when we were kids. Stick your tongue out, I'll take your picture. And so the little boy would take, and then Frank would take his picture, and then he would make the sketch. Then he would lay the sketch on the illustration board and tape it down with masking tape so he could take it off later. And he would put, underneath he'd put graphite paper, transfer paper, and then that would go down on the illustration board and the sketch. And he would then take a very hard pencil, number 6 pencil, and he would go over the lines of the sketch. You can see in this where he did go over the lines. You see where the lines got especially dark, like around the mouth. Right. That's where he would go over the lines and then transfer that to and then he would paint it. He would take the sketch away and then paint it on the board. And this is what I remember. Frank Netter, when he would paint pictures of people, that's what he did. He painted pictures of people. You know, if he wanted to illustrate a condition, he didn't paint a picture of the condition. He painted a picture of a person suffering from the condition. And there's a big difference in those two things. These were not mannequins. He always said, these are not television sets we are repairing. These are real people. And he always had a special feeling for the children when he would paint children who had problems and were born with problems. Then in 1982, at the Utah Medical Center, Barney Clark lay dying, and in the middle of the night on December 1st of 1982, they wheeled him into the operating room, and Dr. William DeVries excised his heart and put in an artificial heart. It was a completely new modality, and it was a sensation, caused a sensation across the whole country. Frank read about it in the newspaper, and it was just serendipitous that the next month he was at a medical convention, and sitting next to him on this panel was Dr. DeVries. And they started talking about this, the artificial heart. And Dr. DeVries invited Frank to come to Utah to meet Barney Clark and to record for posterity the first implantation of an artificial heart. And Frank did that, and he said that that was the most interesting project he ever worked on. Then, when Frank was 80 years old, he's still making these green books. He was still was working on the last volume. Volume 8 was the musculoskeletal system. It was 3 tomes. He was working on that. And Siba then also got the idea that, well, how many pictures do we have? They had, at that point, over 4,000 pictures, which he had done over a period of more than 40 years. So let's see, let's do the math. 4,000 pictures, 40 years, that's about 1 every 3 days. You know, painting was easy, but the study, he had to study. He couldn't make this stuff up. He had to meet with these doctors and learn and what they were doing, and then so it was correct. And well, they said, well, if we have enough pictures, can we make a first-class anatomy atlas of human anatomy? And so they started to go through the pictures. And they got, this gal is Sharon Colosino. She was an anatomist who started going through the pictures. And then they got a very, very fine book designer, Phil Grushkin, that's Phil Grushkin's picture. And they put together the Frank Netter's Atlas of Human Anatomy. It was a colossal project to take pictures that had been painted over 40 years and make them look like they had all been painted at the same time. The color of bone on this page had to be the same as the color of bone on this page. The color of blood had to be the same, those types of things. And the color corrections, the color separations, that was a tremendous job. And that art director was fabulous at doing that, putting that together. And it came out, and it won #1 book of the year, and it still is the most, to this day, it was in its 5th edition, and it is the best-selling anatomy atlas in the world. So, this picture, Frank Netter, this is when he was working on the atlas. This was a snapshot, and they put that in the front of the frontispiece of the book, and that's it. It was in there, and this has become a very well-known picture. So Frank Netter, this is his life story. He went back, he completed the green books, and the 3rd tome of the musculoskeletal system was published posthumously. But this is his story. He would be very happy today to know that the contribution that he's made is still being, because today this medical students still use his atlas, and the green books are now being revised and in their 2nd edition. And he was a very humble person, and he would just be so pleased that he had made this contribution to medicine and to mankind.